Andrew.
Hey, John.
We're here for Broker Q&A. Andrew, I'm John Dyer. You guys know me. That's Andrew Glenn. We're your managing brokers. We're the people that you talk to when you call the broker hotline most of the time. We're the ones that reject your documents and say shame on you. You know, we're those people. We're the ones that keep you out of court, so that makes us good people. If we got any questions for us today, fire away. It's wide open topics. We may lead you down a couple of paths depending on where you go and where you're starting. So who's first?
Anybody?
All right, class dismissed. That was easy.
Yeah, that was easy.
Hey.
Well, if no one has anything, then I guess we can kick a couple topics out there. Couple things that I've been seeing questions on recently are when to cure and what to cure for. And obviously those are all outlined in the contract, but one of the ones specifically that agents seem to be slightly confused on is waiting until close of escrow has been missed to issue a cure when they could have cured for loan docs not being at the title company, or a clear to close has been issued. So that's a big one that I've seen, where you could have cured literally 3 days sooner and gave your seller more options. So just want to remind everybody that Section 2 of the contract is pretty clear that you need 3 full days prior. The loan docs have to have been signed at the title company, or a clear to close with no prior to doc conditions has been issued. So that's a pretty, it's pretty misunderstood that condition exists and can be cured. But as listing agents, that's pretty important, because obviously you're not going to close on time if that has not happened. So you don't want to miss your opportunity to cure the seller on that, or cure the buyer on that one. And obviously too, need to remind everybody that a cure notice is not an invitation for a fight. You know, that's a common misnomer, and I hear it all the time. People just don't want to cure. As John would say, if you don't cure, you're not doing your fiduciary to your clients.
Yeah, John would say that. John was about to say that.
Exactly. So anybody have any questions on that, and just in general on when and how to use a cure notice? Because that's obviously, we get it pretty much every day that agents are essentially afraid to utilize it when it's, specified in the contract that we can and should use it for, either side. So any questions on that specifically?
Andrew, before we take questions, let me piggyback on that for a second.
Sure.
Everybody thinks a cure. I've actually had someone use this term. I don't want to ever cure anyone. I feel like it's a gut punch. That's absurd. Say someone doesn't deliver spuds in 3 days. That's the gut punch. Curing them for it is the block of that punch. It's not a counter punch even, it's blocking that punch. It's making sure that the damage they could do is minimized, and you protect your client. Cures don't kill deals, and I believe you have a fiduciary duty to cure every potential breach in real time. But one of the questions that concerns is people think they kill deals. They don't. You can close with cure notices out. I've closed with 2. Okay, questions?
Mike, you got a question? If you do, we can't hear you. No? Okay. I guess there is no questions, John. You explained that super well, I guess.
Well, and it goes back to what my common theme, and everyone's been in my classes or been around me, is knowing the terms of the contract. And most people have never really bothered to read Section 7A, where the cure notice is. Read it. It's not complicated, but considering how not complicated it is, Andrew will nod his head. There's a whole lot of misunderstanding and a little anxiety around it. Since nobody's asking questions, I want to bring up a topic, because it's that time of year. This has nothing really to do with anything other than be careful. Every year between August and usually November, we get a lot of listings that are listed. The day of listing would be, what's today, August 4th, 2020. and expire February 4th, 2020. Watch your calendars. This is not because agents are dumb. This is not because they don't know what they're doing. This is because it is so easy in the Dropbox calendars to not choose the right year. And the problem with that is that listing is 100% invalid, not worth the paper it's written on, unless you have the ability to travel in time and overcome the laws of temporal physics. In that case, it's allowed, but you have to submit that scientific power to the brokerage before we allow you to have listings that go back in time. It's just a thing to watch out for. And this is also, I put this in my broker notes for the newsletter this week. Make sure you sign your listings. ARS 322151.02 subsection A is very clear. Employment agreements, which is what an ER is a bilateral employment agreement. Requires signature of all parties. And the number 2 reason I reject listings is they're not signed by the agent. They're not only not worth the paper it's written on, but if you're advertising an MLS, a co-broke, you're not entitled to get paid if you don't sign your listing, but you still owe the co-broke. That can be a big deal. I've seen it happen. So double check. Here's my advice always. When you're using DigiSign, one of those e-sign things, just simply put yourself in the loop. And that way, you get a copy, it's delivered back to the seller, because per Rose versus Young, a recent lawsuit from a few years ago, it's not just a matter of enough that you sign it. They have to receive a delivered signed copy, just like an executed contract. Anybody got any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
Of recent, are there any transactions that you know of that have been delayed due to COVID-19? And should we be using the COVID-19 addendum at this point?
Answer to the first one is yes. And the ones that didn't have the addendum, watch Andrew's face. The ones that did not have the addendum, it's turned out to be a monumental pain in the you-know-what for everybody. The addendum's not required. It's still a good idea, and it certainly must be presented to every client. It's their decision, not ours, whether or not they apply those special rights and conditions to their transaction. It's only ours to advise, read this. If you want to do this, we'll negotiate with the other side. It's negotiable, but it's never a bad idea to have that top little disclosure initial. So it's not required, but it should always be presented and make it the client's choice. But we need to know that addendum well enough to educate them what the differences are. It's like line 18 is what most people choose. Line 24 has its benefits in another situation, and sometimes the thing completely does not apply. Like you have an investor buying sight unseen vacant house. In that case, it's a who gives a darn, right? But it's certainly something we always want to present, and we always want to have an email trail, like with our document trail, whatever, that we presented it. So it was the client's decision not to sign it, not our decision not to present it to them, because if we don't present it to them, it's like a gun. It's like a gun when you go to war. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And we've got a situation where someone's trying to manipulate it, another one where they just flat didn't have it, and the seller got COVID. And it's been a little crazy. There have been, according to the commissioner, and I've been on a little work for him for schools and got an update, there have been dozens of transactions affected in the Maricopa County area because of COVID, primarily on the seller side, because you can't move into the house. I mean, it freezes everything for 14 days minimum. So, but it is a thing out there, and I'm an err on the paranoia kind of guy, because that's my job. But certainly, you want to err on the side of caution, and I think it should always be presented. Andrew, you agree?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things where, like you said, you never want to have anybody be able to point to you and say, well, you didn't tell me that. You want to always make it your client's decision. It's just like anything else. I mean, all we can do is present the facts, what the possible outcomes are, and then at the end of the day, it's their choice. We're not a party to the contract. It's their contract, not ours.
Although I did see one on the land contract, and I was kind of amused by that. I don't think you can COVID from a 20-acre lot in Whitman.
Yeah, I don't believe so either, but that's pretty funny.
Carl, good to see you, buddy.
Hey guys, there's a couple questions in the chat bar, just an FYI.
Can I add real quick, since you said hello to me, I unmuted myself. So when you're operationally managing that COVID document, right? We're presenting it to our client, and they go, well, I don't know. What do you think I should do? And I mean, so what are your scripts and dialogues for us agents so that as we present that, as we're obligated to present to our clients, that we walk them through when they go, okay, I'll just tell me what to do. And I don't like it when they say that, but how would you direct, guide, and instruct a client that really is passive and is willing to protect themselves, okay, but not also, they don't want to encumber or create a liability in that negotiation to where the other side gets freaked out?
That's one thing. The liability negotiation, I don't think should be an issue in anyone's mind. This is a worst case if addendum, and whether you have an addendum or not, that if is going to be worst case. That's how I would present it to the client. This is just in case somebody gets sick, and if they got sick and we don't have an addendum, obviously we can't close issues. You can't go to a title company, and you know certain things can't be done remote. Maybe a seller's sick and can't vacate the house, and you sure as hell don't want to move to a house that potentially has contamination in it. So even if you don't have the addendum, that's going to be an issue. Line 18, that section that starts with line 18 seems to be the one that makes the most sense to most people. Simply explain, that this is the path of least resistance. Line 24 is literally prepares for the apocalyptic level of COVID. And the top part is just a disclosure. Having the initial disclosure for me is the important part because it shows you presented it. But just let them know it really is it's preparing for worst case scenario. With or without the addendum, someone getting COVID is worst case scenario. I'm sure we can all agree on that. The addendum just sets up what happens technically and temporally, time-wise, if that, God bless them, hope it never happens to anyone, should occur. And that's how I would present it. It's if you want it, here's how it works. It's intended to protect you. It's intended to protect the other party. It's intended to protect everybody. And as far as us, Article 1 and R4 2011-01A, we don't just have a fiduciary to our clients. We need to act fair and honestly with everyone's clients and giving everyone an opportunity to maximize their protection from a damn pandemic, I think would fall under that article in that law.
And it's not
your question, Carl.
It's not just about buyer and seller. It could be, we just had a case in which a transaction could have been delayed because a company down in the valley that was testing the water on a well, their company had a COVID-19 virus throughout the company and they had to stop. I had a case with the lender. They shut down when the virus just started. So it's not just about buyer and seller.
It's also about us. We've actually had some agents and staff, and I know people at every company in town that have had many people familiar with Nate Martinez, top producer I've known for 35 years. Went through it. He's my age, and it was an interesting lesson for me. So yeah, and obviously this is a situation. I had a conversation with someone. They were getting frustrated. I'm like, this is a situation where the golden rule applies, pure and simple. You have to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. You have to make accommodations because the world has dealt us, it's dealt us a joker when we wanted an ace, and we have to play it accordingly. So yeah, everybody's having issues with it. Good news is, seems to be tampering down again.
So
all right,
I have my default is initialing lines 10 or 11, depending on who I represent, line 18, and sign the bottom of that document. Agreed?
Yeah, pretty much. But make sure seller, if they want to do line 24 or your buyer wants to do line 24, and again, once they present it that way, it's between buyer and seller to agree on that. It's a negotiating point for how to handle in the and this is, I guess this is what I'm going to say now. It's an in the event of only thing. In the event of, which would they choose? And knock on wood, it'd be 99.9% of the time that addendum's irrelevant, and we're all glad for that. But when you need
John.
it,
we had another My Home Group agent that we were all confused on that addendum, and the problem is we're notifying them that this is out there. Where they are confused, and we were too, is that big bold line that says everything from, you know, here on below is a negotiation point. And they had signed, they initialed the top part saying, yes, we've advised our clients of this. But their point was, well, if we get to that point, we need to renegotiate that. And I think that's where we're all confused, is that big bold line that separates the top and the bottom, where you're advising them and then you're negotiating something different. So,
well, the negotiation part is the stuff at the bottom below the line is negotiable. You're negotiating whether you choose line 18 or 24 or line, I believe it's 17 to cancel the contract, or the one at the bottom, which I can't remember what it says, and I think it will never actually be relevant. But that's what the negotiation is. So I, as a buyer's agent, present you a COVID addendum with the top part initialed and line 18 checked, and your seller's extremely concerned or works in a high-risk business where there's a good chance this may hit them and they want maximum protection, then they may say, no, I'd really like to do line 24, and here's why. And you would either fix that in a counter or just adjust the addendum and have it initialed. But that's what's negotiable, is those terms, because there's two completely different sets of rules. The bottom line is the same. You're buying time, and the deal doesn't automatically die, and cure notices can't be issued for people that have no choice, because what came from them came from the devil, not from real estate. Because, you know, I'm calling this the devil's virus, because it's nasty.
okay, great.
Hey, Sherry, I see Sherry Taylor. I saw your question about when are receipts due. So per section 6J, those are due 3 days prior to close of escrow, unless you write something in to that line. So it's 3 days, 3 full days, not 3 days, 3 full days prior to close of escrow. So that's when that would be due. And then I see Jane asked if a termite company sends.
Andrew, one more thing on that. I've done the math, and when I teach contract writing, a lot of people have heard me say this class, I recommend taking that 3 days and making it 7. That's it. That's in everyone's benefit, because if you have a problem with a roof that wasn't done right, and they produced the receipts and 3 days prior, and then you find out the receipts are for work that was insufficient, it's hard as hell to get things taken care of in 3 days in time to close if it's a roof issue. So, and also, what else do we have happening 3 days prior? I don't know. We got signing loan docs. We're in the home stretch of the deal. So changing that to 7 days is what I advise. And I think it protects everybody, because sellers don't deliberately hire bad vendors. Seller doesn't know that the guy screwed up the roof until the buyer gets the receipts and goes and inspects the roof and says, no, this doesn't work. So it's not always the seller did a bad thing. They just sometimes hire bad people. But if you have a Friday walkthrough and a Tuesday close, you got a roof problem, trust me, you're going to have to extend the deal. So I'm always, I'm about potentially paranoid, prepared, proactive problem prevention. And one of the ways you do that is always allow for extra time. Okay, next.
So we have another question. If termite company sends his invoice to be paid at closing and title fails to include it in the transaction, who's responsible for paying it? Well,
buyer.
It would be the seller. The buyer? You think so? I think seller.
If it closes without it paid, the buyer's going to have to pay it. They're the ones that contracted the termite company.
Unless the seller did.
Unless the seller did. But the problem is it's a lienable issue. So the buyer needs to make sure that doesn't happen, because that's a mechanics liens issue. So the buyer's going to have to cover it and go after the seller.
Right.
The termite company won't go after the seller. I know this happens 3 or 4 times a year. They go after the buyer because they can lien them. That's where they have their power.
Wait, sorry, I'm slow. I represent a buyer. We negotiate the seller to repair the termites. They agree contractually to repair the termites. The termites have been repaired. We see the invoice. It's been sent to be paid at title. So as a buyer's agent, I'm not really, obviously, yes, I should check that settlement statement and say, hey, I don't see where you I get it. Where you didn't charge the seller for the termite repair. Okay, so it closes escrow and we miss it, and all of a sudden there's a termite bill due. And your point, just so I'm clear, is too bad, so sad. Yes, legally the seller's obligated. Yes, the title company made a mistake. Everyone needs to work together to get it solved. But for it to happen legally, I would have to pursue the seller through small claims to get that paid, since I own the house now.
And avoid a mechanics lien from the termite company. Yeah. from the pest company. Yeah.
I think there's two distinctions there. Who's responsible for it would be whoever contracted it, but who's going to be on the hook for it is going to be whoever owns the house.
Yeah.
There's two different. It's a clear. To me, it's just a distinction of terminology. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it should have been on the settlement statement. The seller should have paid it. Title company should have caught it. All those things, but who's the termite company going to lien? They're going to lien the house. That's their only lien rights. So,
and then the buyer has to pay it and chase the seller down in a small claims court. You know, that's why auditing every pre-audit, a couple or 3 days before closing, is so very important. And you know, part of your fiduciary duty, because you realize we're responsible for the pre-audit more than the title company is in pure legal terms. The numbers all fall on the broker. I'm so old. When I started, we prepared settlement statements, gave them to title, and they used our numbers. Because back then we truly were responsible, and we used pens and carbon paper.
well, I think that question is a good question. It does lead me to a couple other topics, especially the distinction between who's responsible and who's on the hook. That comes up all the time on our broker hotline. Even on a personal deal that I got a call from an agent 18 months after saying that my seller did XYZ wrong, and now they're coming after the seller. They want to file a complaint against me, all kinds of stuff. So it's definitely something to make sure that your seller is aware of when you do these things. When you do provide receipts and stuff, there's a section in the contract that says warranties that survive closing, and there are that live on just past closing that could come back to bite you if you were untruthful or provided work that was not accurate. Like, those things it doesn't go away at closing. Like, I think that's something that agency and sellers and buyers and everybody needs to be aware of, that some things they just don't stop just because you closed escrow. You could still be held responsible for those items. So,
and if it's HVAC, it can be, many thousands of dollars and blow way over the small claims court level. And I've actually seen a new air conditioner, complete system, put in ducts and everything. It was like $32,000 on a luxury home, and title didn't pay it, and all hell broke loose. The good news is title paid it. Title paid it and went after the seller because it was their mistake and they ate it temporarily. But you don't ever want to get in that fight.
No.
I'll win that fight for you, but I don't want to have to.
Question.
Yeah, it's not fun. Yep.
Should I assume that the termite guy, since he knows he didn't get paid, will he just go back to the seller and say, my bill wasn't paid at closing?
I would never assume anything. I would make sure to clearly and directly have a paper trail of you trying to communicate that, hey, you didn't get paid, and here's who you should go after, and here's who owes you the money, not us, it's them. But ultimately it's going to be.
It actually is my client.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So has the deal already closed?
Oh yeah, it's already closed. And that's when my clients were on vacation. They closed and then left town. And when they got back, they said, I didn't see the termite thing, and I didn't know they didn't pay him up front. I said, why didn't you pay him when he was there? Oh, he just said he'll send it to title. And I said, oh, normally that would be fine, but because now it hasn't been paid.
That's a moral question.
Yes. Okay.
Morally, they made a deal. They should keep it regardless of whether or not a title company screwed up. Again, a lot of the questions people ask in this business, especially about our clients, is simply apply the golden rule. What would you think was fair and right if you were on the other side? And obviously it's fair and right for the seller to fulfill their obligation.
Right. And any mistake, the other thing people need to remember too is any mistake that the title company makes, it's not like Monopoly where the bank made an error in your favor, you get $200. Like there's something that's called undue enrichment, that every single person who goes into a title escrow company signs a document, says that if there is undue enrichment, they will pay the title company back, or the title company will come after them. So it's not just, they made a mistake, lucky me, I get an extra $300. That's not the case. They will and are able, because you signed a document that said, I won't do that, and they're going to come after you. There's just no way You know, I understand that it makes people mad. You know, they forgot $1,200 here, or they paid me extra $1,500 there. Now I got to wire a check. Well, mistakes happen, and you signed a document that said that, you know, if in the event that does happen, you will pay it back in a reasonable amount of time, and otherwise they will come after you, and it's perfectly within their right to do so. So,
and it happens every day. It happens every stinking day. As much as you think everything on the numbers in a title company's computer is perfect, it's not. I heard someone say title companies don't make mistakes. I laughed hard. Carl, you gonna laugh at that one? Title companies don't make mistakes. Yeah. What else?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Happens every day. So just keep that in mind, you guys. And when your seller/buyer calls you up angry and upset with the title company, why are they making me, you know, they're calling me, I shouldn't have to do X, Y, Z. Well, just kindly remind them that the first day they went in there, one of the first documents they signed was a document that said they would not be unduly enriched from a mistake. So it's not something that has to be talked about afterwards. They already agreed to it. Just like our contractor, they already agreed to it. So.
This is Sherry. I have a question. My seller who's buying another house at another location, she's very worried about wire fraud, and she kept asking me, well, how could she become a victim? And I was saying, if you get an email or a phone call, you always need to hang up and then call back the title company and find out if the information was correct. Or there's some other.
Well, so the bottom line, I mean, so we have the wire fraud advisory, but the best advice you can give any client who's going to wire any money is not to do so unless they are literally standing at the bank on the phone with the escrow officer, verifying every single number and every single item that needs to be transferred. And that's the only way that we can guarantee that. Well, I mean, even then you can't guarantee it, but that's the best way. That's the best protection and best advice we can offer, is that you are on the phone with that escrow officer wiring the money at that time, and they're verifying the account, they're verifying the transaction, they're verifying the amount. That's the best.
And not the phone number from an email.
You can offer them.
Not the phone number from the email, because those emails, I've seen them. They actually have a phone number that says call Sally at Lawyers Title, and you call Joe at Lawyers Title, and you call Sally or Joe, and they're sitting in Pakistan or India or Russia, sounding just like the boy girl next door in America. They're going to know everything right to say to get you to push that button. So it needs to be the number on the purchase contract. My advice would say, if you're going to wire money, you call me first, and I will hold your hand through the process.
Right, so the buyer should initiate the call.
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
I had that happen this week, and it was a new home sale, and she said, oh, we're going to wire the money on Friday. I said, oh, so you confirmed that those instructions were correct? She goes, oh, no. I go, could you please? And so she calls back. She goes, yep, I talked to him. Everything's great. I go, what number did you call? Well, their number that she had received on the email. I mean, it sounds obvious, right? And it sounds logical that you wouldn't do that, but it is, to a consumer, it floats right past them. So it wasn't fraudulent. It was fine. It was a new home title company who wasn't even paying attention. But it'll be
a bad day. It'll be one of the worst days of your career, the day that your client sends money and it gets ripped off. And it has happened to my home group clients, and it's heartbreaking. But I get mad when I hear about it happen to anyone, because this is a crime that's specifically targeted at our industry, and often using us. Because you may not know this, they may be sending emails that says this Carl's email, his literal email, everything, his banner, his smiling face, his Carl's the best damn agent on the planet nonsense at the bottom. It may all be there, but it's not from Carl. It's from Yugoslav, some guy in Eastern Europe. They're good. Remember, half the best computer people on the planet are on the dark side, and it's brutal. I say, listen, you need to have a eye-to-eye talk. Grab, don't you ever wire money without talking to me. And we have this thing called cashier's checks, which are still the safest route. And a title company will send a runner to pick them up at someone's home these days. So there's your default, and always be safe. All right, Carl, you got this long question here.
Okay, I'll make it simple. we represent a buyer. The buyer did their due diligence. Home inspection report says, gosh, you know, it's slow moving drain. And we said, it's an older home. We always advise a plumbing scope. Plumber goes out and says, oh gosh, I couldn't really get the scope through, and maybe you can do this. We finally found another plumber who got it through and said, well, you're screwed. There's no way we can deal with we can't rotor it and sleeve it. We can't fix it because it's that old orange bird with that clay pipe stuff. And so it was a $15,000 repair, and it's a first-time home buyer. She's like, and we're like, hey, this might last till tomorrow or 2 years from now, and you know, you can save for it. She's like, I can't risk this backing up, and in December I'm screwed and I have no choice. So she elected to cancel. Seller elected not to make the repair. All right, so be it. All right. They of course sold it the next day, pending, as is where is. They said, you know, the instructions from the listing agent says, you know, let me know, I'll send you the inspection report. The home's appraised, right? They're looking out for their client's best interest, and they are entitled to those reports. They're not bound, of course, because it's not their home inspection. But that home inspection report was very vague. And our buyer understands it, and she asked a question, hey, can you make sure that this new buyer understands that that was understood by the seller? I'm like, well, I can't force anything except after close of escrow. And I'd be happy to provide a copy of that on your behalf after it's closed and give it to the buyer. I don't see any other option unless I'm missing something.
You're not. That's the seller's got an absolute duty, again, under R4 2011-01A and Article 1, B and Article 2, to disclose that.
How could you
estimate from a contractor is not an inspection report. It's evidence of malfunction. It's evidence of a material defect, and that they're obligated legally and ethically to deliver it to that buyer. If they don't, if that's not really none of our business, but after closing, if that client says, I want them to get this, you feel like giving it to them, be careful.
That was my question, okay? That's why I brought it up. I like to be careful. And what does that expose me to as an agent? And what risk and liability is it for me to go to some stranger's house and say, oh, by the way, we were the prior buyer and my client instructed me to give this to you? Is there?
I would give the buyer the new agent's information and have them give it to him directly and say, listen, all I did was provide information because that's what my buyer wanted. I didn't stick my nose where it doesn't belong. My buyer did.
Got it.
Culpable deniability, plausible deniability.
Okay.
And technically the spuds should have been updated, correct?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely,
Oh yeah. That's an absolute must disclose. That's when it comes to anything that has to do with the word flush, there's no question. It's a absolute disclosure issue.
And that's,
we all want when we flush, we all want things to go away to the right place. It's a rule.
And like John said a billion times before, the spuds is just a document. Even if you waive it, even if you waived that document in the contract, that does not in any way or any stretch of the imagination relieve the seller's ability, the seller's liability to disclose. So even if that new contract said waive spuds, waive insurance history, it doesn't matter. The seller that's just a document provided by AAR to make it easier to disclose. It's not they don't get relieved of that duty to disclose. So no matter what, they had to disclose it. That's a state law.
Section 5B, it's also in the contract. Section 5B, not 4A where the spudge is. Section 5B says, and this is a near quote, seller warrants the seller has disclosed any and all latent defects, material defects, information containing the property, except opinions of value that would affect consideration paid by the buyer. That's about as unvague as it can get when you say any. The problem with that is always my favorite word, material. And you don't always know it's material to somebody. But again, I go back to when it has to do with flushing, it's material to everyone. And it always costs money. In this case, like Carl, 15 grand is a lot of money.
Yep.
Not for Carl, but for me. It's lunch money for Carl. Anybody else?
Fine. I love asking questions of the brokers. If no one else has one, can I ask another question just for fun?
Is it going to be Stump the Broker like you would want to play a game show with me?
There's no way I can ever stump you. It's not going to happen. Richie, if I told him to turn around and gave him a shot of tequila, maybe. Okay. But so here's Section 4D. Okay. The way I read that online, 167 clearly when the word if is the first word, okay, that defines that whole section, right? I don't like line 173, 175. I've got this, it's like an emotional issue with me to leave something unchecked. I get it. The home's built in 1985, and the first word in the paragraph said if the premises were built prior to 1978. So since the answer was no, the rest of the paragraph doesn't matter, and I don't have to check those boxes. But if that's the case, then why do they ask me again on line 181 and 182 to initial the appropriate year? So I'm just want to reconfirm that it's okay for me to feel weird about leaving an unchecked box on a contract.
Carl, it's okay for you to feel weird. As a matter of fact, in your case, I would think that would be a natural feeling. Just like me.
Normal. I always feel a little weird. But just a little
Yeah, weird is my default, so I don't ever have a problem with it. Well, the reason 181 says there should be boxes checked. 182 says that part's irrelevant. Just think of it that simple. Don't overthink it.
Thank you. Thank you. See, you've just made my day.
That's what I do.
There you go.
Anybody have anything else? Any other burning questions that we can help you answer?
There's one more little topic I want to throw out there, and this may get some discussion. And this is just a statement. I'm literally in my 42nd year. Oh my God, I've been doing this 41 years, and I have been through 3 massive price increases and 2 major crashes and 1 pretty good, pretty close to a crash. And one of the things that precedes that we have to be careful of, and we are in an extremely weird market. This is just to be careful. My statement is, it is definitely possible for someone to simply pay too much for a house to the point that it's stupid. And right now our inventory is in a percentage basis, our inventory in Maricopa County, and I know Tucson's pretty close, is about as low on a percentage basis as it's been in the time I've been in the business. And the real numbers are as low as they were 23 years ago. That's insane. And what that does, it makes pent-up demand, it raises prices. Here's the problem. Appraisers are not going to give us bigger prices. So if people are actually doing something that I have 4 horses of real estate apocalypse. 1 is extreme low inventory. 2, waiving appraisal. 3, escalation clauses. And number 4 are massive amounts of REOs. Escalation, be very, very careful. You always have to advise someone when they're waiving appraisal or asking for an escalation clause. You have to make sure you advise them in writing that they are taking a substantial risk of paying more than the house will be worth 3 years from now, because that's really what everyone should think about. Worst case scenario, what happens in 3 years? We have to be very careful because bidding wars make clients emotional, and we're not allowed to be emotional. We're supposed to be the logic. So take good care of your clients in this area, because if we see the slightest turn, who gets hit first and worst? Waived appraisal and escalation clauses. And I'm not talking about a crash. I'm talking about a natural dip in the market, which we're 4 years overdue for, Andrew, Carl, and that cyclical, aren't we a 7-year cycle? And we're on year 11 or 12. So just be careful, because you don't want that phone call in 3 years when they're all mad at you because why the hell did you let me pay this much for the house? Now I'm losing it and it really hurts. I've had that phone call, hundreds of those phone calls. Anyway, just a thought. Be careful. Be smart.
Well, you can't just say that and then just say have a nice day and hang up this Zoom call. I mean, that's just goofy. I mean, you're correct. Of course, you're correct. But the reality is, you're a general on a white horse sitting on a hill, and I'm in the friggin' trench killing people. And so I'm trying to get a deal so I can, buy the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip in December. I mean, that's how I drive this. And so I get it. I have buyers who are passionate about buying a house. And so I say, well, market's going to shift, so maybe you should wait a year or 2. And they go find somebody else who's willing to help.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
I know you're being responsible. My point of view is that our job, John, to go to my point of view is I hear what you're saying and I agree with you. However, my job is to educate our clients as to how supply and demand works. That whole thing that Tina Tambor does every week, it's great when you show the relationship of the Cromford Index to rising and dropping prices. And you can see that over the last 20 plus years, how prices have gone up and gone down. And so I explain that to them and I say, there's no better time to buy than in a seller's market, because when it's in a buyer's market, nobody wants to buy. Okay, but you need to recognize that things change and things turn. And if you're, you were at the high end of the market, and if you need to buy a house because you just sold your house, it's all relevant. But we have to educate them to those things, and I agree with you. But if they're trying to win at all costs, we have to be able to help them. I agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why don't we
And it's the risk. For me, it's our clients need to practice risk management, and we're the risk management coach. If they're taking on more risk, we just simply need to make sure that they understand that. Because there are people out there that think prices are just going to keep going up and this market's going to be great forever. And this is why I'm really freaked out on this. $225,000 house, bid up to $292,000. Waived appraisal, waived inspection. That's insane. And that's the kind of stuff we're seeing. If you're involved with a client that wants to do that, you just have to be careful, because if it goes wrong, they're going to blame you. And make sure they understand the risk. The more you pay, the higher your risk in the long term, because it's an investment and something. And it's like the stock market. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, but they need to be aware of that. And the real point here is, I don't care what you do with the escalation clauses and waiving appraisal. Waiving appraisal is insane, but the appraisals are not going to come up. Appraisers are not going to give appreciation in this market more than 3 to 7% a year. And if they give 7, they're being generous. They're just not going to do it. So we're running into an interesting. What are we selling, Andrew? We're selling 3 for every one we're listing.
Yeah.
Do the math. We have the lowest inventory in God's history, and we're selling 3 for every one we're listing. And prices really can't go up much anymore. It's going to be. I'm a study of this industry. It's going to be an interesting 6 to 9 months as the whole COVID thing calms down. Are we going to have an effect to the market by people who didn't pay their rent? Are we going to have landlords dumping houses or walking away and get foreclosures? We're going to have people that bought cash investments, had renters in there, and they're like done with it because of COVID, and they're going to be wholesaling those houses. So it's going to be an interesting, fascinating 6 to 9 months for the real estate industry. And I'm kind of a sadist. I'm looking forward to it. The crazier it gets, the more I like it. I enjoyed the heck out of 2007.
Well, and Carl, just to piggyback off John's point, like using something like an escalation clause is something that I generally shy away from. But if I do it, I get the buyer's authorization in writing that they understand what we're doing, because we're literally disclosing their position up front, giving the highest price they're willing to pay, and therefore taking away all negotiation from them. So I want them to understand, like, this is what we're doing. I understand it may be what's necessary to win a contract in this market, but I want them to also understand that I explained to them what we were doing, and we've given away their position in writing to the seller, and they understand that, because that's something I see everybody on the mastermind group throwing that out. Use an escalation clause. Well, that's great and everything, and I understand wanting to win contracts because we're in the business of selling real estate, as you stated, but there's also that dark cloud, like John said, of getting a phone call like, hey, you didn't tell me that using an escalation clause was essentially making me pay $6,000 more than I wanted to pay. Stuff like that happens. And that's what we're trying. That's what John's getting at. Not necessarily don't sell real estate, because obviously we need to sell real estate, or John and I are just, we're talking on Zoom to each other about other stuff, not real estate. So
I was just, if any opportunity I have to give for you, Andrew, I would treat you respectfully and comply with anything you say. When Mr. Dyer says something, if there's an opportunity to give him trouble, I'll take it. And so my point.
The term is ball busting. Let's be honest.
I try, but I can never find that opportunity. So, Andrew, I found I've been less successful recently with escalation clauses, and because of that, a good listing agent's going to manipulate that against you with all the others, because you've got 10 other offers you're dealing with. So I started telling my clients, look, here's what we've done. And you also have to deal with the lowest common denominator of our peer group. Unfortunately, not all of them are capable, the wrong word, sometimes, okay, it gets confusing late in the day with 10 new offers. And so sometimes you can get lost in the mix. So why not just give us your absolute highest and best right now? And then when they come back and they do this, you're being truthful, honest, and straight up. If you don't get it, we move on to the next one.
Well,
Well,
Carl,
an escalation clause in pure terms is negotiating against yourself.
Exactly.
Which is, it's like a seller gets multiple offers and uses the multiple counter. We's in a really good position to start a better bidding war by asking for highest and best. Sometimes a multiple counter, a seller is actually negotiating against themselves. An escalation clause, a buyer's negotiating against themselves. And then to let you know that I mean what I say, even when the market was crazy before, I don't sell a lot of real estate now or any, but I did a lot of business in the bubble. I have never written an escalation clause. I won't help agents write escalation clauses. If my client wants to write one, I tell them to go find another agent for that house. I will not do it because I believe it's just downright stupidity on the behalf of the client. And you know me well enough that I've said that to at least a dozen clients word for word in my life. I won't even write one. I won't help you write one. That's how much I'm against them. So you hit my soapbox here, baby.
I knew that was going to get John. We've talked about that before. And I don't write them. I don't write them when I represent buyers. And to be quite honest, when I'm a listing agent, I would prefer not to see an escalation clause because it's complicated. People don't understand it. And what it leads to is it leads to cancellations unless you get them to waive other things.
So with your expertise and your years of experience, let's segue to those buyers, agents that are frustrated, and they have frustrated buyers because when you have 3 to 4 times the number of homes that are for sale that are under contract, and you have at least twice as many homes that have closed escrow in the last 30 days that are active, I mean, the odds are against you. And if you're a first-time home buyer or you're a minimal down payment buyer, it becomes more challenging to find a way to win. It's hard.
Well, Carl, what I would suggest and stress to anybody who's missing out on contracts is to write a hell of a lot, to write backup offers and use the additional clause addendum that binds the seller to that backup offer. Because I mean, we're seeing things drop out because of these escalation clauses. So if they like an offer, they miss out, submit a backup offer, ask the seller to execute the additional clause addendum. Then if that falls out, you're under contract, and you can always withdraw any of those in writing prior to that execution point. So that's what I would do. I mean, I would advise them to write legitimate backup offers, strong backup offers that the seller would want to execute the additional clause addendum, and then, roll the dice. I mean, that's the best advice I can give, because at a certain point you can't, the escalation clause isn't going to win every time. And frankly, it's going to make them pay more than they want. Whereas if you write a very clean, strong backup offer and the seller says, you know what, that's a good backup offer, you're not competing against anybody when it goes back on the market. You just get the contract. I mean, that's what I would do.
Rich?
Big statement. I know it's important really for us as agents. I mean, those of us who've been around, let's say during 2007, to understand that, like I know of 2 sellers in this past year that bought homes in 2007, and it still didn't reach the value of the time that they bought it. I mean, that's a long time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like John said, I don't like, everybody's overpaying. It's not gonna, the appraisers, we're seeing it. I mean, you could see, just look at our mastermind group and see how many times the low appraisal comes up, and then even on the real estate forum, you can see how many times that issue comes up, because, we're thinking, appraisers aren't adjusting for the market, where, that's the double-edged sword of getting an appraisal, is they're looking at 6 months prior and we're trying to forecast 6 months ahead. And it just doesn't work that way. So, I would, in order to win more deals, Carl, I would definitely use the additional clause addendum. I think that's the way that's the way you protect your client. And if they keep, because they're going to keep losing, then they're going to keep losing. And then eventually they're going to get frustrated and say, hey, I want to pay $20,000 up and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this escalation clause. And you and I both know that's not in their best interest. And one of our jobs is to protect them from themselves. As much as we like to make money and sell real estate, you know, we're a fiduciary. We're not a salesperson. We're a fiduciary, and our fiduciary is to protect the clients. And whether that's cost us a commission or not, that's irrelevant. That's our job.
There's also another, there's an unfortunate side of this. And Carl, this is unfortunately what you're competing with. And all you guys are competing with. There are unethical agents and unethical buyers who are deliberately doing what I call jack it and back it. Jack up the price as high as you can and get an escrow, get all those people to go away. Thank you, Carl. Get all those people to go away. And then once you get an escrow, do an inspection and try to bring the price back down. There are people that are doing that on purpose. Understand, Section 5C of the contract, if that's the buyer's intention, they just like the buyers making multiple counters, that must be disclosed. And the problem is agents are doing it on purpose. We'll just offer whatever you have to use an escalation clause. And once we get an escrow, we get all those other poor saps off the table, then we're gonna go back and squeeze the seller, which if that's done intentionally is blatantly unethical and illegal, because no one can say that's acting fair and honestly with all parties. And it certainly doesn't abide by Article 2 of the Code of Ethics and Section 5C of the contract.
Hey, Carl, can you send me that slide? Turn on your mic.
Yeah, I'm a Cromford subscriber, so if Tina's listened to this, Richie Laser was there when I got into the industry down in Ahwatukee, so I will do a solid for my boy Richie. Okay.
It's all right. I use Tina for all our follow-up results stuff. So.
All right. Yeah, I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, kids? Well, I think this was the best one of these yet. Andrew, what do you say?
I think it was great. It's good.
And you guys, on behalf of the company, we thank you all for all you do. We thank you for working your damn asses off during one of the weirdest times in the history of real estate, and I've been through some. And we want you to be safe, be smart, be well, and know that we brokers, the hotline, we've got your back, and you don't just Q&A here. That hotline is there for your Q&A, as is a mastermind. I'm going to ask one favor. If someone asks a legal question on the mastermind and you're not one of us, please don't answer it. Some of the answers agents give to legal questions make me extremely uncomfortable and or nauseous. So y'all have a great day. Andrew, let's say goodbye.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.